Welcome, namaste, beautiful souls. Welcome to my Friday tarot chat. Hello. Well, today is a response to several questions from students as well as from the the questions below in some of my videos. And I thought today I would just have some fun and talk about shuffling cards, which is something I absolutely love to do, as well as the process of cutting cards and some different things to think about when you're cutting cards. The way that I do it, the way that I have done it, the way that all the funky things that can happen when you're cutting cards. So welcome. Lovely to have you here. My name is Sadhana. I am a reader, also a teacher of tarot. And if you're interested, what I say resonates with you, there are a bunch of courses down below and you might want to check that out. So welcome. Yeah, I pulled out a few decks here to work with today, and card stock is everything as far as shuffling goes. It makes all the difference in the world. And good morning, Clevis. Namaste. Or good afternoon, I should say. Welcome. And I thought that I would just shuffle a few different decks for you and kind of describe my experience in that process, because I can't really talk about shuffling. I kind of have to show you what's going on here. Now, one of the things to realize is that your size of hand, as well as the size of the cards, also makes a difference. And this is the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot, which is a slightly oversized tarot. Future Ancestor is tarot size. And also, when I turn the cards on the side, you can see that the Future Ancestor Tarot is a different GSM, or it's a different card stock, because it is slightly narrower. Now, there's 3 cards that are missing. They're in my card stand from the reading this morning, but 3 cards shouldn't make that big of a difference. This is a brilliant card stock, and I have heard you can look, most of the deck creators have detailed information about the cardstock on their websites. So you can go there and check that out if it's an indie deck. And I know a favorite cardstock is in the Marigold Tarot, and I think this might be similar, but this is just really beautiful. Now, I began shuffling when I was a little girl. So this has been something I've always loved to do. I have average size hands. They're certainly not huge. They're not little. So I am a riffle shuffler. And in order to riffle shuffle, I place the cards in my right hand. I am right-handed. And if a card fits, if I can hold it like this in my hand, then I know I can riffle shuffle it. I play cards like poker and crib and different things like that as well too. So I am always shuffling cards. I take about half of the pack and move it so that, now one of the things I do when I'm shuffling is I am aware of tops and bottoms, and I may have just switched this because I was not really paying attention to what I was doing. And if you do not want to have reversals, this is important. So when I cut the cards, I'm looking, all right, this is up, this is the top, and this is the top. So I want to pay attention to that. I'll do it. I'll pay more attention when I cut the next pack. Right? Okay. And so then, because this cardstock is so beautiful, I use my thumbs and very slowly I just begin to let go of the cards. And it is much easier to do this on a table than to do it in the air. However, I learned how to do this in the air. Yeah, welcome, Gomez. Then I pick up the cards and you can simply press them back together. If it is good quality cardstock, there is no issue with riffle shuffling because the cards will they won't get a bend to them. The only issue with bending cards is when the cardstock is slightly cardboardy, and yeah, then you worry about damaging the cards. And this is just absolutely brilliant. Easy to shuffle. So what do I do here? I put my thumbs on the backs. So my thumbs are on the back, my fingers are on the edges, and I have a slight bend and just let go. And it's so easy. You just have to practice. And the better the cardstock, the easier this is. Now, of course, I can also overhand shuffle. And I can't lean and do that. So when I am overhand shuffling, let's move some of these decks out of the way. When I am overhand shuffling, I am, depending on the quality of the cards, there's about 6 passes that I can do. And I'm in no hurry when I'm overhand shuffling. I don't necessarily need to look at the cards. Hello, Ifat. Namaste. And yeah, so sometimes cards will fly out. If I am, and you know, on the way I have the cards set up, I can see them, but you know, you can have it up and down so you can't see the cards. And it's very relaxing. You know, this is something you can practice anytime, like if you're watching a movie or something like that, you're sitting down in front of the television and just put a deck of cards in your hands. And there we go. There's two cards that have jumped out. I will talk about jumper cards in a little bit. Okay. So as cards get bigger, so these ones are slightly bigger, it becomes more difficult to riffle shuffle, and you need a certain size of hand to be able to do this. Now the Usi cards, let's see if I can operate the computer at the same time as hold cards. The Usi cards are fine. I can still do this. This is beautiful card stock as well too. So slightly larger, thicker GSM still can do that. Standard size card. Hi, Helen, welcome. And just let me show you here. They are, this is the Tildwick Tarot, the 2nd edition. And it is definitely, it's a little bit more cardboardy. And it is way thicker. It also has gilding on the side. So let's compare this in width. So Future Ancestor and the Tildwick Tarot. So what happens when cards get thicker and thicker? It gets harder to shuffle. And thank you for chiming in, Liz. Now, I want to talk a little bit about gilding. If you are new to riffle shuffling, then I do not recommend practicing with gilded edges. You can actually cut yourself. Some of the gilding is very hard to shuffle, and this is really stiff. Oh my God. Like, I need strong hands to do this. Like strong hands. And if I were to shuffle this deck again and again and again and do many readings, my hands would actually be sore. And I can feel the gilding on my fingers. It hurts. So this is not a great deck to practice with. When there is gilding and the deck gets a little bit thicker, then I probably, if I'm doing readings back to back, I will be overhand shuffling. And it's so lovely to listen to when you have this beautiful cardstock. I just lost that sound, but some decks have this really beautiful sound. And the experience for me of shuffling is multi-sensory. So there's the experience of what's happening in my hands. There's the sound of the shuffling, the beautiful sound of the back bridge shuffle if you're riffle shuffling. And it's really it's very relaxing if you can practice shuffling. Liz says she has small hands and often have to do what I call a sideways shuffle, so the thick cardboardy cardstock it just doesn't work. So this, and I don't do this. I call this the Japanese shuffle. Let me see if I can do this with a different deck. And I have lots of Japanese friends, and they all shuffle this way. And oh my God, they are so good at it. And I suppose if I practiced shuffling this way, and I imagine that's because they have smaller hands. And so that works. And it's kind of brilliant. I love watching them shuffle this way. If you watch people from different countries shuffling, it's really interesting. There also are quite a few YouTube videos where magicians are teaching you how to shuffle, and those are definitely worthwhile watching. Yeah. So there's an issue when the deck gets bigger as well as when the deck gets smaller. So as also, I want to mention about trimming decks. Do I have a trimmed deck on my table? That is the question of the hour. Isn't that funny? I don't know if I even have a trimmed deck. Oh yes, this one's trimmed. This one's trimmed in this lovely kimono pouch. So I want to talk about that as well too, because that changes, the trimming decks changes everything too. All right, so this is a small deck. This is Nellie's Tarot by Kelly Fitzgerald. And so here again is Future Ancestor, and here's Nellie's Tarot. This is, of course, it's Kelly Fitzgerald, so it's beautiful cardstock intended for shuffling. And let's go back to Future Ancestor. And compare. It's the same size, same thickness. In my experience, when decks get smaller, it doesn't mean it's easier to shuffle. It can be harder to shuffle, but because this is, hi, Amy, welcome. Like, this is brilliant. It's called Nellie's Tarot. So yeah, so that works fine. Now, if you have a tarot deck that is more oracle size and also a little cardboardy, so oracle size, not only does it get wider, it gets longer, and as cards get wider and they get longer, it's harder, much harder to shuffle. I don't know if I've ever tried to riffle shuffle this one also, because it's getting on the cardboardy side. So if I cannot hold it in one hand, but I can hold it enough to divide it in two. And this is a big stretch for my hands, and I can't get any bow in it. It's really hard to do that. So this deck, I tend to overhand shuffle, and I don't try to fight with a deck if it doesn't make sense to riffle shuffle it. So there needs to be some sort of, practicing shuffling both overhand as well as riffle shuffling, it's a great skill to have, to be able to do both. Yeah. Yes, Amy, very, very popular in Japan. And oh my God, are they good at it? Like crazy, crazy good at it. And people that do it just, you know, don't play cards all the time. And I'm not talking about tarot, tarot readers. My years in Japan, I wasn't reading tarot, so I wasn't a part of that circle. But wouldn't it be fun to go back and to engage in that in Japan? It would be really fun. Okay, so that is, oh, okay, so I want to talk about trimming decks. I don't have a guillotine cutter, and that is something I would invest in. Um, I need space to store one, like a really good guillotine cutter, and don't have one. I think that might make a difference. I have used a sliding cutter, and I also, most of the time, I use scissors. I cut in the daytime, I cut in bright light, no problem using scissors. I've done a few videos on trimming decks. This is the Margaret Peterson Tarot. And this one was really easy to trim because I was able to take off, I think this one I trimmed off the border on all four sides on the back. This isn't the current 25th anniversary edition. This was an older edition. And so when you do that, you still have the borders on the bottom. And this is a larger deck, so trimming this deck definitely made it more manageable. Now, what happens when you trim a deck is you ruin the integrity of the paper. It's almost impossible. I have a couple of decks that I trimmed so perfectly, you would never know they were trimmed, but that is rare. To have it work out that way. There's always something that's a little bit off. And you know, if I do this, you know, it sounds really good. The paper seems okay. And I suppose as well too, it depends on the amount of ink that you put around the sides if you are coloring it. And what happens is it gets a little bit clunky. So you can't have that nice 1 1 1 1 1, you know, like that. The cards just don't divide the same way. Because you've messed with the paper. You've messed with the integrity of the paper. But it's so beautiful and it's so much more manageable. I love those I don't know if they were white or yellow or what they were, gone. I'm not, when I do trim a deck, I do my best. I do my best. And I rarely will I trim a whole deck in one day. I'll do about 20 cards, and light is really important, especially when you're trimming a deck that has multiple borders, you know, couple of inside borders and an outside border. You got to decide where you're going to trim. And yeah. So I also have been cutting fabric for a long time. So I have no fear of scissors. Yeah. Okay. It may be an Asian thing. Okay. Yeah. It's patience. Patience is the key to a good trim. Yes. All right. So those are just a few considerations about shuffling. And so the next part of the question had to do with cutting cards. And there are a lot of ways to cut cards. And so let's kind of go to that next. Let's go to cutting cards. All right. I'm going to turn my hand so this is my left hand. You're looking at my left hand, okay? My card cam is perpendicular to where I am, so it's a little awkward, but I'm going to do it this way. I generally use my left hand for cutting. Not for cutting, not for trimming, but for cutting cards. And my left hand is my lunar side, my receptive side, my intuitive side. It has less of a quality of doing, less ego involved. And that is why I use my left hand. People ask, well, I am left-handed. Does that make a difference? No, it does not make a difference. It's still your left hand. It's still your left side. So I generally use my left hand, and because I'm using my left hand, more often than not, I am cutting from right to left. If you want to cut from left to right, you can also do that. That works perfectly fine. I'm going to talk about why I cut left to right after. But if I am cutting from, let's put that back. So if I am cutting from left to right, then and I'm only cutting in 2 piles, then I'm going to just cut the cards. And then I'm going to pick up this pile and put it on top, and this will be my first card. And I'm just going to draw from the top of the pile. What tends to happen for me in cutting cards is that, let me go back over here. It's just a little easier for me. There is, and I describe it, hello, Aurora Star Z, welcome. It's almost like and see, only one card came off. And rarely does that happen, but sometimes just a single card. But what I was going to say is, it's almost like there's a magnet in the cards. And I know that it's a beautiful cut. It's a very intentional cut. When I feel that sort of a magnetic pull, and I can't describe it in any other way. It's a perfect cut, and it can be anywhere in the deck. So that is something that feels really good. I also, when I put the cards in the pile, I like the pile to be nice and neat. I don't usually cut from a messy pile, if that makes any sense. I know that's a weird thing to say. I don't cut from a messy pile. And so using my intuitive hand, I cut the cards, generally speaking, from right to left. Now, sometimes when I do that, weird things happen. Occasionally, a card will get stuck. And I'm hoping today there'll be some So here's an example. I pick this pile up, and this card stays on the table instead of joining the cut. So I pay attention to this card because this card obviously wants to be seen. Now, I'm talking about the cards anthropomorphically, like they have a mind, like they have energy. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's like the cards know, my hand knows, my guides, whatever is a part of this process of tarot and reading. I think we just need to go with it. And it is always the perfect card. I don't think you can make a mistake. Let's put these back to get interesting. This is a card that I talked about this morning. If you were here with me, I'm doing an advent calendar, and I've been on broadcasting every morning and sharing tarot tips every morning if you're interested, 8 a.m. Pacific. So again, cut the cards. And then usually I will pick up this pile. I'm in a very awkward position right now and put it on top. And then I'm going to read from here. This is how I cut the cards when I am doing something quickly, when I don't have a lot of time. Once upon a time, I keep the cards as they are in their original boxes. We all have our own ways. Yeah. Once upon a time, when I was a more of a rookie reader, I'm going to share with you this system I had because I liked my system. And I'm thinking in those days, I probably cut left to right. I'm guessing because there's a reason why I cut right to left now. So let's just do that. And I used to cut the cards into, sometimes I would do it that way, into three. I would cut them into 3 piles. And sometimes I would cut the cards like this. And the purpose of cutting the cards into piles was to have the querent select a pile. Now, sometimes the querent, honest to God, has dirty hands. The querent is really nervous and does not want to pick a pile. Sometimes I would ask the querent to select a pile, just to point. And sometimes, I don't do this anymore, but I used to lay my hands over and feel. And I would choose the pile that had the greatest vibrations. Like this pile is vibrating differently than these piles. And I would listen to what was going on in my hands and let my hand choose the pile. Yeah. I want to go to Sharon's comment here. I'm going to tell you a story. I used to teach a lot of workshops, Oracle and Tarot workshops, at a shop in West Vancouver. I would take the ferry over in the mornings and spend the day at the shop and teach and do readings all day. And usually it was like a long dining room table of people. So there was like 8, 10, 12 people, depending on the day. And one of the things I would do is, as people arrived for the workshop, is I would very politely ask them, and I would say, would you mind going and washing your hands, please? I take very good care of my cards, and I like to keep them as clean as possible. Something like that. And so I would, as people arrived, I would send them to go wash their hands before the class started. And if people came late to the class, then they would go and wash their hands, and they could come back, and I would give them permission to touch my cards. Sometimes people sit down and they'll grab some hand sanitizer, or they will take some lotion out of their hands. Well, they're not touching my cards with any goop on their hands. It's so hard to clean cards. Some cards show every little mark, like the Marielle Tarot for one. Every little mark shows. And so I do from time to time go through a whole deck and I wipe every single card front and back, trying to get off those, fingerprints, the grease marks. And they don't all come off, but it's not because I'm paranoid about germs or anything. It's just because it looks bad on the shiny cardstock. So I see what you mean. Yeah. Trimming versus preparing for a reading. Yeah. The other question, there's so many questions that I've been asked. Okay. So I've shuffled the cards. I placed them on the table. And some querents who I know well, I know they love to shuffle. And I will let them shuffle the cards. But that is because I've done many readings for them. I know they know how to shuffle. I know the cards aren't going to go all over the floor. Sometimes I will ask the querent if they're feeling kind of relaxed to cut the cards, and they can cut the cards in whatever way they want. And then I will say, which pile would you like me to use? So sometimes I put it in the querent's hands if I'm doing a reading in person. Okay. During, oh gosh, so not during the intensity of COVID, but certainly early on and later, after it began to fade away, I was doing readings with a mask on, and I was not letting querents touch my cards. But also, I can tell if people don't want to touch the cards. Some people just are really, really nervous about it. So, yeah. Okay, so let's go on. More about cutting. These days, my favorite way to cut cards is to use the first operation, which is described in a lot of the Golden Dawn books. You can get the instructions in Holistic Tarot, Benabel Wen's book, the back of the Crowley book. Any of the old school tarot books will teach you how to do the first operation. And it is part of a long series of procedures to do a reading that includes astrological reading and a tree of life reading. It's a wonderful process, and if you've never done it, it's really cool. But the first part of the first operation is to cut the cards from right to left. And the reason we go from right to left is because the 4 letters of the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, Hebrew in general, is read from right to left. And when we are working with the Waite-Smith, when we're working with the Crowley deck, and any decks that are inspired by those decks, I assume that they carry that particular energy. And in this cutting procedure, sorry, I didn't show you, all the cards start here, and then you cut half of them to the third pile. Here, let me do that again. And I do have a whole video on this first operation. I think there's 2 videos on it. Cards start in one pile. Everything emanates from Yod, from fire. The fire pile gets cut into the third position, which is the air pile, the Vav pile. And then the Yod pile gets cut into the first He. And I do intend for it to go even, but what happens is I just got very few cards with that cut, and so I kind of go with it. And then the air pile gets cut in half again, and 1 card came off, and that's going to, or 3 cards, and that's going to go into the Pentacles pile, into the final He pile. So I have 4 piles to work with. And this is really, really brilliant. There's a million ways now you can choose your pile. You may, so yesterday I did a reading for Helen. I believe Helen is here in the chat, and I did a reading for her, an email reading. And the nature of her question was about her, oh, Helen, I hope this is okay to say this. I apologize. There's nothing personal I'm going to share. Was about her dharma, her life path. And for me personally, the energy of wands is where we get the information about life path and dharma. And so I decided to use this. Sorry, I got distracted by Aurora Starcy's comment. I will respond to it in a moment. So I used this pile for the reading. And in that theory, All of these cards are significant. And then, after having decided to use this pile, I can do any number of things with it. I may choose to shuffle it again. More often than not, I don't. But if there has been, maybe I walked away from the table, I don't know. But the theory is that all of these cards are going to play into the message, if that is your intention. And so I can, with these cards, I can cut and do a 3-card reading. I could do a 9-card portrait spread. I could do a Celtic cross. I could do any number of spreads from this group of cards. This group of cards all contains the energy of the Yod, of fire, of wands, of everything that's associated with the element of fire. And so there's this underlying layer of that energy in this pile. And so if I'm doing a reading about somebody's life path, I'm going to choose this particular pile most of the time. Okay, so let's do that again. The other, and I've done a few videos on topic cards and significators. If you are working with a significator, so let's suppose it's your birthday and you're working with a major arcana that is associated with your birthday. So let's suppose I am doing a birthday reading for myself and my sun sign is Leo. So perhaps what I'm going to do is choose the pile. Let's shuffle. Okay, there's a bad shuffle. And cut the cards. And then I am going to look for the strength card. And I'm going to use the pile that contains the strength card. Part of my process is to guess, to use my intuition, to figure out, based on what's going on in my life right now, how I'm feeling, where the strength card might be. Is fire shining brightly? Is it going to be in the wands pile? Is fire right now a little quiet, or is it perhaps harmonizing water? You know, there's lots of questions I might have. So I'm going to look for the strength card and then work with that pile. Okay. I want to go to this comment here. I've always been confused by Crowley. Did people say he was evil because he practiced magic and they were just religious idiots, or was he really evil? Well, honestly, I think that is a conversation that's entirely up to you to review and to read his work and to do research. There are, if Lon Milo Duquette has a YouTube channel. He was trained with and worked with Crowley, and very entertaining to listen to him. I think before you can answer this question, you need to know something about the Tree of Life and the Golden Dawn orientation of the cards, because Crowley in his writings refers to this all the time, as well as many, many layers of esoteric, from different esoteric bodies of knowledge. You need to have a discriminating mind. And it's really interesting. I bought Crowley's yoga book, for example, and read that. That's available as a PDF. I have my own opinion about certain interpretations. And it was through reading that book, because that is a discipline that I'm really familiar with and have studied and practiced in depth. I reached the mind that he didn't practice long enough. And my personal feeling is that Crowley dove into every kind of spiritualism with both feet. He wanted to experience spirit in every way possible. I think he was open, like energetically, he was very open, he was very vulnerable. And I think he carried a lot of unresolved karma. And so he projects a lot of that in his writings. I think he practice and I'll use the word practice, played with different kinds of spiritual practices to find his way to enlightenment. And some of the things that he practiced were, bizarre to the common people, very unfamiliar to the Muggles. Now, if you talk to some people who worked with him, yes, you will hear the word evil. You will hear all kinds of strange things. And yet, there's a part of me who has heard firsthand accounts of certain yoga masters who have been accused of all kinds of crimes. And I've followed their journeys through being, what do you like excommunicated from the order and things like that. This happens in every spiritual order. And I think it happens when a master is so desperate for their own enlightenment. Perhaps there's a danger in sharing things with people who aren't ready. There's an old adage that says, well, let me just tell you a story instead. So when you have one of those moments where the portals open up and perhaps you see an angel, or you some kind of experience where, I don't know, you communicate with a tree, or you hear some heavenly voice, or there's just some magical, mystical experience that kind of blows you away. These experiences are for you and for your journey. And until you have integrated that to a certain level, I don't think it's for sharing. And I think a lot of, and I'm not just talking about Crowley, I'm talking about these, I'll call them masters, that end up getting themselves in trouble, haven't reached that place of integration. They're still novices in that particular that level of study, or that level of mystical experience. So, okay. Magic spells. All of this is so interesting. In my practice, I Always prepare the sacred space. There is tremendous reverence for any ceremony. The directions are laid out. Everything is cleaned and prepared. Um, it's done in a certain fashion, in a certain order. There is no smugness. There is no arrogance. There is only respect between you and the divine and the shoulders that you stand upon that have developed this practice. And at the end of all of it, I close the circle. I close the ritual. I think we all need to go through learning experiences with this. And as long as you go into it with honor and respect, a sense of reverence, you open and you close, I think all will be well. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the topic at hand. Cutting cards. I do have a list of questions. Okay. You will see me a lot of the time do a very simple 3-card spread. And I do this every Tuesday when I'm doing my live readings. Anytime there is a question, this is how I navigate every spread. This is how I navigate questions when I have a bunch of questions to do or I'm doing a really quick reading. And so I shuffle the cards. Either mentally or orally or a combination of both. I go through a variation of an intention and an invocation. This is a reading for the collective on the 8th day of December 2023. In the second decan of Aquarius, the moon today. I really like to acknowledge where the moon is. The moon is moving from Libra into Scorpio. It's an 8th day. It's an 8. Eights are such powerful, I think, numbers. Friday is the day of the goddess, which is a little bit out of alignment with the number 8. So, and Scorpio moon, Sagittarius sun. It feels like the energy of today is kind of all over the place. I would encourage being a little quieter today. It's the way the moon is also waning. So a lot of this goes through my head, my mind. Just like really quickly, this is sort of like a checklist as I'm preparing for a reading. Scorpios, yes. So what I do is I cut the cards. And I picked up that pile and one more fell off. And, you know, I trust this. One more card fell off the cards I picked up. That tells me that the card that's on top here is really important. It didn't want to be missed. So then sometimes I just push these out of the way, and I know that I'm going to be working with this card. This is the first card. It is the Listener of Candles. The Listener of Candles. I didn't have a question. This is intended just for a reading for all of us. The Listener of Candles. All of the listeners know the energy of water. They have that intuitive ability to receive. And this particular court shines a little more actively and brightly than the other queens, the other listeners. And yet, there's something about this deck, and I have another deck as well too that calls the Queen's Listeners. I love this title for this court. It's a reminder that the receptivity lives here. Your dynamism, your creative dynamism may be called forth today. Yet, let's not be too exuberant with this energy. This is the most important card in the reading. It is the first card. The second and third card, I usually place left and right of the first card. Sometimes I go like this, in this position, emphasizing the card that's in the center as the most important card. And then I use the second and the third card to expand on the reading. And I allow the second and the third card to give me more information. And perhaps the suggestion for holding back energetically has to do with this process of the Five of Needles. All of the fives, we're moving through something challenging in all of the fives. And with that Queen of, with the Listener of Candles being there, I know that we, I, you, me, have the ability to navigate this. And I would say it's important not to react. It is very important to receive this confrontational news, words, email, messages, document. If there is something that kind of really rubs us the wrong way today, to be a little more patient with it than we normally are. It's about us. It's about our journey. Something is being highlighted here that may very well make us feel vulnerable, but it is part of our development. And I like that this is with the Scorpio moon, this feels, and it feels heart. Now, when I say it feels, this is me reading the energy in my body. I can actually feel my heart, not my anatomical heart, but my energetic heart space. So the space around my sternum feels, it pulses, it moves. So there's some level of connection there. I have been glancing at the third card the whole time. As I'm doing the reading, I'm looking at the whole story. Fours. This particular four, it feels quiet. It feels reserved. It feels like it supports everything I said before I even drew the cards. Hold back. Stay home. Withdraw. Listen. Retreat. Integrate. Rest. Heal. This card is the Student of Cups. It's not a four. This is about learning. It's about learning to listen. It's about learning to receive. How are you at receiving constructive criticism? And if there is something that arises, remember this reading and do your best to listen, to receive. And all you need to say is thank you for sharing. And then you take that, you go off on your own, and you spend time with what you receive. And Aurora Star C says that she has not, there's nothing that has come up yet for her. Me as well. I can't think of anything that has bumped up against me yet. When I do a reading like this, I think this can, marinate out there in the ether for 24, 36 hours. So I want to keep this message in mind. I think this is an important message. The most important card is the card in the center. And that is the way that we respond. Okay. All right. So, in general, your process of shuffling and cutting is your own style. It needs to feel comfortable. If you feel clumsy and awkward, that's not an energy that's conducive to a fluent reading. So practice shuffling. Find your way. The more you practice, the easier this becomes. And practice cutting, practice shuffling, practice cutting different ways, practice using your right hand, practice using your left hand. You can't practice enough. And eventually you will find your way, and eventually you will you'll find a way that feels just right for you. So thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I will be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for my Advent calendar. And again, thank you all for all of you that have been commenting. It's been lovely. And there are many days to go, 16 more days to go. Take good care of yourselves and have a lovely rest of your weekend. Namaste.